Let me cold open for you.
Do it. Come
All right.
on.
I'm going to take you today on some very on-brand Corrigan territory.
Beautiful. Okay. I think I've got a picture already of where we're going.
I'm going to tell you a little bit.
Haunted Lake.
But what?
Haunted Lake.
No lakes today.
Okay.
Good guess.
Okay.
Do you want to take a second guess on where we're going?
The deep south.
No. All right.
No. Okay. Go on.
You're out of guesses. Here we go. I'm going to tell you today about the Donner Party.
Oh, cool.
I've mentioned them a few times to you because I just like here. I could say the Donner Party and everyone would know what I was talking about. It didn't occur to me that this is not a universal experience. Each time you've been like, the what?
Yeah, and I'm delighted that we're going to go there because I'm curious to see if my vague as fuck understanding of what it is in any way related to what it actually is.
Do you want to tell me what you think it is first? I always enjoy this, like when you tried to explain to me what you thought Thanksgiving was.
It's it's not a party, is it? In
No.
As we might understand it.
No, it's not.
No one's having cake at this particular party. Yeah. Okay. Does it involve like a bunch of people traveling a long way?
It does, yes.
Right. Okay. I think I roughly vaguely. Is it like Cannibal the Musical?
I actually haven't seen Cannibal the Musical, but it sounds like you're on the right track.
Funny as fuck, by the way.
Yes. It's probably exactly what you're thinking of then. So I'm going to give you a little crash course into the most famous case of cannibalism in American history.
Beautiful.
Now, this is a huge story here. So I'm only going to like scratch the surface of what exactly this is, because we could do a million episodes on this. I recommend listening to the last podcast on the Left series on it, which was absolutely phenomenal. And
so they did a series. They got a lot of
multiple episodes on this because it's huge. Also the book The Indifferent Stars Above Us, which was their main source. You can look at the links that I reference for this on our blog on jackofalltrades.com. Also, there's a book by Michael Wallace called The Best Land Under Heaven, The Donner Party in the Age of Manifest Destiny. That is worthwhile. Also, Michael Wallace, the historian who I will also reference later on and who wrote that book, he's also the voice actor who plays the sheriff in the Cars movies.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Wow.
Side note.
Diverse. What a little side hustle he's got. Yeah.
Seriously.
Super diverse. I love that.
So in the mid 1800s, America was in the midst of expansion fever. So there was this term coined in the 1840s called manifest destiny. Have you heard that before?
Manifest destiny. No, it just makes me think of the best, the Democracy Manifest guy. You know who I'm talking about, yeah? The Australian theatrical guy who gets arrested. It's a whole thing. I'll show you later. Long story short, no.
Manifest destiny means nothing to you. It basically meant that it was God's will for the white settlers to expand their territory across this entire landmass from Atlantic to Pacific and take it for themselves. And they were like, there's no one out there anyway, so we might as well take it and make it God's country.
I see.
Obviously, there were people out there, and
yes.
But those people were indigenous people and Mexicans. So as far as the settlers, or pioneers as we often call them, cared, it was all up for grabs for us. So as Sheriff Michael Wallace puts it, it was, for many California tribes, it was total genocide. There are stories of Anglos going out and literally having target practice by shooting Indians. That was part of the whole manifest destiny thing. We could possess the continent because there were no people out there. There were Mexicans. Yes, a lot of it belonged to Mexico. And there were all these Plains Indians, but they, in fact, weren't people. They weren't human beings. So it's ours.
So this is the first thing I'd love to clear up here.
Yes.
You're quite right. We do hear the term pioneer used often in that context. Yeah. That's whitewashing, I guess. Is it? That's
basically. It makes it sound like this heroic kind of like, people
striking out into the wilderness. Yeah, of course.
And kind of, erases the fact that what pioneers actually are genocidal white settlers going out and killing Native Americans in order to take their land and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So at the same time that the Donner Party was setting out on their journey west, President Polk had the U.S. at war with Mexico, which would lead to the annexations of Texas and California, and further the general sense that everything from coast to coast was rightfully ours by mandate of God.
Yes.
So obviously it became super important that people then go out and, make homes in that new territory. You can't just have this empty space and say it's ours, right? So
yep.
The group generally known as the Donner Party, it's also sometimes known as the Donner-Reed Party, was led by brothers George and Jacob Donner and their friend James Reed. And they brought along their huge families, and along the way picked up several other families, including the Breens, the Graveses, and the Keysburgs. At its peak, the Donner Party boasted somewhere between 90 and 100 people, and a good chunk of those people were children, from toddlers to teens. Like, about half, maybe more even, were kids in this party.
Incredible.
Yeah. So they were among the many posses of pioneers that left their comfortable homes on the eastern side of the United States to settle in California and take advantage of new opportunities to become even more rich and prosperous.
So and we are talking living. How would conditions on a journey like this have been for people, for children? What do you live in? How do you clean yourself?
At this point, moving westward was basically an industry, right? So it was generally pretty safe. People traveled in covered wagons, like you would imagine. The Reed family, for example, on this they called it like the Pioneer Palace, because it was like a 2-story covered wagon with like a nice feather bed for the mother and like a stove and all this stuff in it. So like only rich people were moving out. Like you couldn't afford to do this if you were like a poor person. So a lot of times also when we think about like this myth of pioneers, we imagine these like scrappy Irish immigrants and stuff like that, going and making their way out to make good. And really, we're talking about wealthy, upper middle class people who are going out and doing this.
Like you said, with the opportunity to become even more so.
Right. Like they had land, they had property, they had, businesses, all that kind of stuff. They just wanted more. And
this is interesting. This is giving me so many questions. So when they get to this, place where they can, claim their manifest destiny and just muscle on in on this land, what's the process there? Obviously they don't buy it because no one, it doesn't belong to anyone. Do they literally just stick their fucking flag in it and go, ours now?
Yeah,
wow.
That's pretty much exactly what it is. Sometimes things did belong to people there that they would buy from someone else. There were some settlers who had immediately sort of set out lots of land and, taken up this process, and you could buy or lease from them. But in general, it's the put your flag on it kind of situation. And this is
law of dibs.
It's dibs. That's exactly what it is. So these people are going out and they're getting basically free or extremely cheap land. They are shortly after this, 20 years later or so, you have the gold rush. So those families being there all of a sudden now have access, first dibs on this like mineral wealth that's there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, a very easy way to become prosperous as like an early adopter of California, essentially. And so, like I said, it's an industry, so it's not especially dangerous, aside from the fact that it's the 19th century and like literally everything is dangerous. Like you can die if you brush your teeth the wrong way at that point.
Yes.
But for the most part, it's pretty safe to travel westward as long as you stay on the path. But the Donner voyage was doomed almost from the start, as they were duped by a grifter's guidebook into taking an untested route that would allegedly save them 400 miles of travel.
Oh, fantastic.
Considering this trip was already going to take them 4 months to go.
So did someone sell them a book?
Yes, this was like it was a published book, right? That came across, and they were like, okay, this is going to save us time on this 4-month journey. Great, let's do that. That's awesome. But it would be the first of many mistakes that would ultimately lead to the deaths of half of the party. So the book was called The Emigrant's Guide to Oregon and California, which sounds pretty legit. It's not like get rich quick in California or anything like that. Like it's it just sounds like a regular book that someone might buy. And it was written by a man named Lansford W. Hastings.
Oh, it's such a perfect name.
Such a grifter name, isn't it? It's really perfect.
Step right up, folks.
So at one point on their journey, they actually ran into a friend of James Reed. James Reed, of course, is one of the three sort of heads of this party. And this guy was named James Kleiman, who was an explorer and who had actually like accompanied the author, the Lansford Hastings, out west as he was kind of figuring out his route. And he said to them, don't take this shortcut. Lansford Hastings doesn't know what he's talking about. He, in fact, has never taken this cutoff himself. I advise you strongly, don't take it. Stick to the known California trail. Don't take this shortcut that's going to save you time, because it won't.
So they were warned. They were completely warned. This guy,
Super
Lansford,
warned.
is full of shit.
Yeah,
His
like that's
book is
strong language right there. That's not like,
yeah.
I don't know, guys. It's a little, I don't know if he's like vetted it super well. It's like, guys, don't fucking do this.
Yeah.
This is a really bad idea.
Wow.
For whatever reason, they elected not to listen to him, and they continued forth on the route set out by Hastings.
It sounds like the equivalent of, taking travel advice from me. You know what I mean? If I were to go, guys.
At pretty much every turn, when presented with a choice, the Donner Party chose the wrong one.
Yeah.
And just outright, they started the journey about 3 weeks too late. So timing was everything, as the route became exponentially more treacherous as winter set in. So they would, it was common knowledge that if you could not pass the mountains by early fall,
don't bother.
You didn't want to do this. Right? And so they started 3 weeks late as it was. And that's, that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's the difference between a mostly clear path and devastating blizzards.
Sure.
And as luck would have it, winter also set in earlier than usual that year. So their delayed start, along with several breaks they took to rest or replenish supplies, and the fact that the supposed 400-mile shortcut actually cost them an extra 30 days, put them in a real bad spot.
Great job, Lansford, or whatever your fucking name was. Great book.
Yeah, real cool one. Good job, guy. So while shit really hit the fan when winter came, it had already gone to hell long before then. Their travels across the Great Salt Lake Desert took them considerably longer than expected, in part because it was actually twice as long as Hastings had promised. Amazing. And in part because it was terrible to take wagons across. It was rocky, it was muddy, the wagons kept getting stuck.
I don't expect you to know this, although actually, now I've said that, I do expect you to know this, because this is exactly the sort of thing you would know. But did Lansford's chickens ever come home to roost? Did he ever pay the fucking price for his flimsy travel advice?
I think I should know the answer to that, because I have read about this, and I think they talked about it in the last podcast on the left, but I'm not entirely sure. So I will have to get back to you.
I'd love to know more about the story of his life, because he can't have had faith in his own book. He must have known that he was
right. And what he basically did, the reason that he did that route was because he had set up several little operations along that route that they would have to use, so he was setting it up. So like, oh, you're going to have to happen by my shop and my this and my that, so he was not concerned with people taking this path. Really. He was just kind of like, this is going to funnel them towards stuff that's going to pay me. So just big old grift all the way across. Awesome. So Salt Lake Desert, twice as long as it's supposed to be, terrible terrain to get across, absolute disaster. The excess time it was taking caused them to run out of supplies far earlier than expected. Like they'd packed enough for this trip that they were going to make it all the way across the country. They were going to get to San Francisco. They were going to have excess stuff when they got there.
Chucking food out.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Just like, straight up making it rain. Like, that's how they expected this to go.
So at what point did the kids start looking tasty? At what point did...
We'll get there.
Okay. Unlike the Donner Party.
Oh. Wah, wah. So they had to stop several times to receive provisions and just to straight up rest from the exertion of the grueling voyage, because they're losing livestock along the way, whether it's like Native Americans are stealing them from them or they have to like kill them because they can't take them along with them.
Oh, okay. So they take like meat animals.
Yeah, yep. They were
Okay.
taking stuff with them that they could eat, and that was pulling
Yeah.
the wagons as well.
Right.
But those aren't really, most of them have died or been stolen or things like that as they're going across. And each extra day just puts them one closer to total catastrophe. And they end up right smack dab in the middle of it. Also, in what one source described as a road rage incident, James Reed killed another member of the party after an argument, just straight up ganked the guy, shot him.
Wow.
And it was initially proposed that he be hanged for it, but instead he was banished from the group and sent on to California on his own, where he was to gather supplies and bring them back to the party if he made it.
Right.
And he did, in fact, make it all the way to Sacramento. But by the time he tried to get back to the party, the route had become entirely impassable, and there was no way for him to get back with any form of supplies or help.
Did he survive? I need to know that guy survived.
He survived. Yeah.
Yay. Good.
He did. Yeah.
Good.
I mean, he murdered someone. I don't know why you're saying.
Well,
good.
no, but I quite like his character arc here as well. That's not on. You're out of the Donner Party. Get out of here. Oh, and it turns out that it was the best thing that could happen to him. Yeah,
exactly. So it was October 20th when the first blizzard hit, like I said, very early in the season for it.
I'm casting this in my head, by the way, as you go.
Ooh.
I'm sure there have been dramatizations of this, millions of them.
Yeah, probably.
None as good as the one that I'm cooking.
I love it. Well, so October 20th, this blizzard hits, and the Donner Party is literally buried in snow. And it became clear that there was no way for them to press on. So they began to construct lean-tos and makeshift cabins to shelter themselves from the elements. So some of them actually managed to make essentially like actual cabins, and some of them were just like too weak and it happened too fast, and all they got up was like some canvas over some sticks that was out there.
Losers.
It's worth noting, by the way, that they were real socially distant about where they built their shelters, because at this point they were all just sick of each other's shit.
I bet. Yeah.
It'd been 6 months on this arduous journey, and they were just straight over each other. Even in a survival situation, they couldn't stand to be around each other 1 minute more. So they were just kind of like, yeah, you know what? Fuck you. I'm gonna be in my lean-to. You be in yours. There you go. And winter didn't let up from there. And the party, again, largely made up of children, found themselves trapped in their little antisocial lean-to village for months. With nothing to do but try not to freeze to death. Like, one of the kids reported later on, like, it was like they lost the will to play. It was just like, yikes. All you're just doing is sitting in these canvas things
for days at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yikes.
And as people died, the tents became increasingly putrid.
Yes, here we go.
Determined that a crew of the strongest survivors, along with 2 Miwok guides — Miwoks are a tribe of indigenous people — would set out on snowshoes through the mountains to try to seek rescue. And Mark, that's when the cannibalism started.
Yes, here we go.
The snowshoe party, which came to be known as the Forlorn Hope, was completely into the elements. And soon they began dropping like flies. After the third death, they decided the only way they could continue to survive would be to eat that corpse.
Eat the dead.
Now, the 2 Miwok men refused, as it was completely taboo to eat human in their beliefs.
When to go, mate.
Exactly. You know, like, we all know this. We know that you don't eat.
Joag fans will know all about that.
In indigenous cultures, not great. So this left them starving and weak, though. Like, they were just as, facing all the same elements as these guys were. Which made it all the easier for party member William Foster to accost and murder them with a gun. And then the white men ate the 2 Miwoks as well. Yeah. Which, by the way, is again like whitewashed from this whole story. Like, you'll read a lot of stuff and it'll claim like, oh, they only ever ate people who like died naturally.
Sure.
They murdered the Indians they brought with them. And this shit is why they don't want you to learn critical race theory here, because the second you look at anything about people who settled the United States, it's like every single one of them is garbage. They're all
You are the
trash.
baddies. Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
straight up the baddies every single time. But anyway, just to add insult to injury, by the way, the Forlorn Hope found rescue when they stumbled into a Miwok settlement, which took them in and helped them, not realizing these assholes had just murdered and eaten two of their tribe.
No.
Yep. And keep in mind too, like those two guides had saved their lives a few
Yeah,
weeks
of
before.
course.
Those guys had
Yeah,
brought them
yeah, yeah,
provisions
yeah.
and all this kind of stuff. And then they killed them. And then
And
they
then
went
they-
into their tribe and were
Oh.
rescued by them after murdering them.
Really shabby behavior from those lads.
Really shabby, just downright trashy, classless shit is all that. Anyway.
Jerks. I'm going to go ahead and call them jerks.
I'll allow it. I mean, harsh words, but I'll allow it. So rescue came to the party members back at the lean-to camp in several waves. And by that time, those survivors too had been eating corpses of the over dozen people who had died there. One woman explained that the children had eaten the last of the food, and then the wolves came and started digging up and eating the corpses they had buried in the snow. And
Wonderful.
so the women went, you know what? Why don't we eat them instead of letting the wolves have them? Might as well.
Makes sense.
By the time the last group was rescued from the mountain, their camp looked like something out of a horror movie with, quote, body parts, including heads, reportedly strewn around the snow. And that is the Donner Party.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Mark. I hope you feel a little
Phenomenal.
more educated on
I
our
do.
cannibal history.
I do. And might I say, you weave quite a tale, Corrigan.
Thank you very much, sir. I
I was-
try.
I was in hook, line, and sinker. I really was. For the record, among the cast of my Donner Party,
Ooh, yes, please. Let's hear it.
Walton Goggins is in there. Danny
Oh,
McBride
for
shows
sure.
up at some
For
point.
sure. Mhm.
Matt Damon is one of the guys who goes off with what was the tribe called? Did you say them?
The Miwoks.
The Miwoks. Matt Damon is one of those guys, one of those shitheads who goes off. Christian Bale is probably in there somewhere.
Ooh, yeah. Totally.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. Coming this fall.